Welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Alexander with the Saratoga Springs Public Library, and we're delighted to have Deb Czech back. She's been doing some programs for us on Zoom, and it's worked out really well. And today's program is Plant-Based Sandwich Fair. And when she talked to me about doing pickled onions, I got all excited about that because I love pickled onions. So we'll see what else she comes up with. So at this point, I'll introduce our speaker, Deb Czech of Planted Platter. You all have, or some of you have seen her before, some of you are new to her. She's excellent. So thank you, Deb.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here. It's a good thing to do on a rainy day. As Chris mentioned, you can put questions in the chat and she will ask them for you so that we can move through the presentation fairly quickly. And I wanted to do some plant-based sandwiches for a couple of reasons. One, it's becoming sandwich season. I mean, I suppose it's always sandwich season, but for some reason I'm thinking of picnics and hiking and things like that, that a nice sandwich is a handy thing to bring along. Also, it's a convenient thing to eat at your desk or take a break from your work during the day. And another reason I wanted to focus on sandwiches is that as a plant-based eater, I try to avoid, or I do avoid, animal foods. And a lot of sandwiches, we traditionally think of things like meat and cheese. And so those will be absent from the recipes today. One of the reasons I avoid animal foods is for my own personal health, but it's also becoming clear if you read about climate change and sustainability that animal agriculture is contributing to greenhouse gases. And Chris is going to share with you at some point a link in the chat of a very good article put together by the Center for Nutrition Studies at Cornell. That is where I got my original plant-based certification training. And they've put together several things to think about related to eating animal foods, animal agriculture, and climate change. So I won't talk about those here because we have a lot to cover in terms of the cooking and the recipes. But if you're interested in that angle, certainly helping to prevent further climate change and help reverse it is another reason to think about eating plant-based foods. And then the third reason, in addition to health and climate change, is compassion for animals. And so many people are motivated to stop eating animal foods for that reason. So those are three primary reasons. I'm sure there's some others. For me, it was an interest in my own personal health that suggested to me just about a decade ago, actually, that I look at eating more plants and less animal products. And by the time I was finished with a 6-week training class at Cornell that I was able to take online, I was done, and I kind of pushed animal foods off my plate. But there are lots of tasty plant foods to make, and that's what I want to share with you today. We're going to look at making some plant-based sandwiches, and I also want to we'll start with the condiments. As Chris mentioned, she was very excited about the pickled onions. I love them. I can eat them right from the jar. And I wanted to show you, talk about how to make those. I did go ahead and make the pickled onions, the olive spread, and the cashew mayonnaise in advance, just due to our time limitations today. But I will talk about those recipes, and they're fairly easy to follow. There's nothing hard about making them. I'll talk about a few of the maybe less known preparation techniques as we go through those. So before I get started, let me just share with you a little bit more about plant-based nutrition. I do teach classes in that subject specifically, talking a lot about nutrition. I won't do that quite so much here, probably share a few things as I move through the recipes. But one thing to think about when you're eating a plant-based sandwich is all of the benefits that you're bringing to your body through that. You can think about something we call the nutrition rainbow. Let's see, lining things up under this camera is always a trick for me. Here we have a lot of colors that you may find present in fruits and vegetables. And this chart talks about the antioxidants that are present in all of those different colors. So when we make the sandwiches today, you'll notice I've tried to incorporate different colors because different colors often bring in different vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. So that's one thing to think about when you're eating plants. Another thing to think about is all of the fiber that you're getting, right? Animal foods do not have fiber in them. So when you substitute plant foods in your sandwich, you're already boosting your fiber and doing your body a real favor. So those are some topics that I go into more detail in the classes I teach. You're welcome to take a look at that and sign up for the newsletter if you'd like at plantedplatter.com. Let's move into today's recipes. So like I said, I have done the condiments, but taking a look at that first recipe in your packet for the olive spread, I love bold, robust flavors. And so something like olive spread with garlic and capers in it, some lemon zest, that's a perfect thing for me to add to a sandwich. And in today's recipe, we'll add that to a vegetable-based sandwich that really is highlighting the olive spread and how flavorful it is. Let me show you some of the ingredients for that. These may be familiar to you if you do a lot of cooking, but if not, I thought I'd share what I used in that recipe. So this is in the first page or the behind the cover sheet of your handout. There's not very many of these green olives left, but you can see that these are some of the big Sicilian olives, I think they call them. Here, I'm going the wrong way. And they came with a little bit of Italian seasoning. I got these out of the deli bar, but you can also sometimes find them in a jar. Another type of olive I used in this were Greek Kalamata olives. Oops, got to go this way. I bought these at Trader Joe's, but you can easily find them in various supermarkets, often in the aisle that has Italian foods. You'll often find them there, sometimes elsewhere. I know at Hannaford in Saratoga, you can also find their own store brand of Nature's Promise, I think it is, in the same aisle as the pickles and things like that. Also use some roasted red peppers in a jar. You're welcome to, of course, make these in your own oven or on your grill to roast them fresh, but sometimes I find keeping a jar handy makes it easier. And then also some capers. So these are these little spice. Oh, they're not hot spicy, but they're very salty and briny little berries, and they're just delicious. And blending all of those with the garlic and the lemon zest makes a really tasty spread for a sandwich. So like I said, I already made that and I'll use it later. I did, while I'm talking about the recipe, want to cover two things related to the lemon that you juice. And there's actually lemon juice in almost all of these recipes today. You may already know this trick, but sometimes people find it helpful. If you're about to juice a lemon, it's useful to roll it on your counter with your hand and sort of press down hard, and that softens up the lemon and you'll end up getting more juice out of it. And then in terms of the zester, you can certainly use a tool like this that pulls the zest off the lemon in big ribbons. But it's sometimes faster to just use a microplane grater. You can find these easily in the cookware section of most stores now. They're very common. Mine does not have a padded handle on the end. It's a really long one, but oftentimes they come with a black handle. And you just run this over your lemon, and it pulls all the zest. You can see these lemon shavings coming up in the tray here. So that's a couple tricks on the lemon. Let's move on to the next condiment, which is the cashew mayonnaise. I'm just shuttling things back and forth to my other counter here. The only thing I think I need to mention around the cashew mayonnaise is that it uses raw cashews. And these are cashews that have not been roasted. So they look a little whiter. I don't have a comparison cashew for you here, but they're a little bit whiter in color than what you'd normally snack on, for example. Those usually have a light brown. So these are white and they're a little bit soft. And when you soak them, as the recipe suggests you do, it allows you then to put them in a blender and create quite a creamy paste from them. But the soaking is important. If you have a really high speed blender, like a Vitamix or a Blendtec, those are particularly good at this. But I actually found my Vitamix is made almost for smoothies. It has such a wide base that for a small amount of cashews, it really wasn't that effective. So I ended up using my handheld immersion blender, you know, stick blender in a smaller container, and that did fine with the cashews. So you may have to play around with whatever blender, or if you have a stick blender, you could try that as well. But I think a blender with a narrow base will do just fine on this recipe. And I think I mentioned the soaking. So that's, oh, I did want to mention, if you are allergic to nuts, which many people are, you can also make a nice vegan dressing with tofu. And the kind of tofu to use for that is this, this brand is called Mori New. But the important thing to look for is this silken tofu. And so this is firm tofu, but it's a very different kind of firm tofu than what you would buy, say, in the grocery store in the produce section, this you know, container that's water packed tofu, right? This is great, just like the picture is showing there, for grilling or stir fries, things like that. But this silken Morinu tofu is really great for making the mayonnaise, or even making a tofu. It's similar to egg salad, but made with tofu. And it really has the consistency of a hard-boiled egg white. So this is shelf stable. It comes in these little packages, the vacuum packed, or I think they're called Tetra Packs. So you'll find this in the international aisle, along with the soy sauce and other Asian seasonings. It just sits on the shelf. And what's nice about this is it can sit in your pantry for a long time. So it's very handy to have around. It's also great for making a tofu scramble, which is similar to scrambled eggs. It has a very nice, smooth consistency, and is not does not have as much water in the block of tofu. So just mention that if you wanted to make a tofu mayonnaise, you can look that up online. There are lots of recipes for it. The ingredients are very similar to this cashew mayonnaise, but just with tofu. And why would we want to even make mayonnaise? Why not just get a jar of mayonnaise from as we used to buy? In fact, I have some. It's vegan mayonnaise. This is the Follow Your Heart brand. People often call it Veganese. But the reason I don't like this, although I do have some in my refrigerator, and it's handy to have on hand if you just need a little bit. But this is really made with oils, and oils are a processed food, right? We take whatever we're getting the oil out of, and they grind it up, and that's how we get the oil, whether it's olive oil or canola oil or vegetable oil, soybean oil. It's a very processed food. And so I prefer, if I have the time, to make a mayonnaise. It tastes amazing when you make fresh mayonnaise. And the cashew mayonnaise is really my favorite. Cashews, obviously, if you're allergic to nuts, are a problem. Also high in calories. So yeah, you want to be a little bit mindful of that. But again, the fat that's coming from the cashews is, it's a healthy fat, but you just don't want to eat too much of it. But the amounts that we use in these recipes are just fine. Okay, so that's covering the mayonnaise recipe. And I will show you the mayonnaise that I made later. It just looks like mayonnaise. And the pickled onions, Chris's favorite here. Let me grab those. So here's a small dish of the pickled onions that I made. And you can see that they're made with red onions. And when you put the red onions in the vinegar and lemon juice and let them sit for a while, the red color in the onion sort of bleeds into all of the white part as well. And so you end up with these beautiful pink onions. And the recipe, you'll note, calls for cooking the chopped onions in the vinegar and salt mixture for about a minute. And that takes out some of the really harsh bite of the onion, but it still leaves plenty of onion flavor. So these are mellow onions. When you put them in your sandwich, you'll enjoy them just like you'd enjoy a pickle, but you won't be enjoying that onion flavor all afternoon like you are when you eat raw onion. So these are really nice to make. I have a big jar of them in my refrigerator. I tucked this bay leaf in here to remind me to say that you can add herbs and whole spices to the jar. And I did add 2 bay leaves to my jar, and it creates a very nice flavor. Other things you might try would be, a stalk of dill weed, or fresh tarragon is very delicious. And then the recipe gives you many ideas for whole spices, peppercorns, fennel seeds, all sorts of different things. So you can experiment with that. The one caution I would say is if you're going to add something really hard, like a peppercorn, make sure that when you use the onions, you fish them out, because nobody wants to chomp their teeth onto a whole peppercorn when they're eating a salad or a sandwich. So you'll just have to use some caution, maybe put them at the bottom of the jar and try to keep them down there. But these pickled onions are really very delicious in so many things. Okay, so that takes us through the first 3 the first 3 recipes, all the sort of condiments. And now we'll just go into the actual sandwiches and how those are made. And the first one I want to start with is the what I call better than tuna salad. So let me grab the tray of ingredients for that. Just give you a better bird's eye view here. Sorry about that noise. So I think I'll just talk about these ingredients as I use them in the recipe. But let me start with showing you this close up. This is actually a tofu mayonnaise that I made with that Morinu tofu. I made it yesterday. And you can see it. It looks a fair amount like mayonnaise. Let me get a spoon so you can sort of see the consistency. You know, it holds its own just like mayonnaise would, right? It scoops up and I can hold it on a spoon. It's not falling off. It's kind of thick. And I like it with this recipe. I used a little bit of, when I made the mayonnaise, I used a little bit of nutritional yeast, which gives a very savory flavor, somewhat almost cheesy, but there's not enough in here to make it cheesy. But I used a little bit of that. And I also used a little bit of black salt, which gives kind of an egg-like flavor. And so I happen to like that with the tofu mayonnaise. I didn't use them in the cashew mayonnaise, which has just got a really nice, light, fresh taste. But let me show you then, I will show you more of these ingredients as I go forward, how we make this better than tuna salad. So I'm going to start with the chickpeas. It's 1 can of chickpeas, a regular size can, or 1.5 cups if you're making your chickpeas at home. It's about 1.5 cups of chickpeas. I made these in the Instant Pot, which is a pressure cooker. Makes it very easy to cook a large volume of beans. But I always keep canned beans in my pantry as well, because you know sometimes you just need a meal, and if you have a can of beans, you're on your way. I'm going to use a potato masher to mash these up. And I found that I like some of them mashed, but not all of them mashed. We're not making hummus here, right? We're making something that needs to have a little bit of texture when we're done. So I'll just mash these up and get a knife out to clear that. You could also use a fork, or you could put them in your food processor if you prefer. If you do, just pulse your food processor so you don't end up with like I said, with hummus unexpectedly. I also use this potato masher when I'm making refried beans. If I have, say, black beans or pinto beans in the skillet, I just take the potato masher. And by mashing a few of the beans, it kind of breaks down their starch and lets things get thicker. But you also still have some whole chunks that are satisfying when you bite into the food. All right, so that's there. All right, to the chickpeas, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of this meal. Get you a better view of what I'm doing here. Hard to keep everything on the camera. And then adding a little bit of mustard. I am not going to measure this. I'm just going to do a teaspoon, what looks like a teaspoon to me, and you could do the same. You can always add more if you need to. Then some celery, 1/4 cup of chopped celery, and some green onion. You could do red onion if you prefer, but we have a lot of red onion today, so I did green. And then some pickle relish. 2 tablespoons of pickle relish or chopped pickles. I happen to like this Wickles brand a lot. I don't know if any, oops, again, upside down. This comes out of Alabama, and they have a couple of different kinds. This is sort of a mild relish. They also have a jalapeno relish, which has jalapeno pepper in it. It's a little bit spicier and zippy. Really delicious. Love their products. And then the final ingredient is one that you may or may not be familiar with, and that is a sea vegetable called dulce. And it is, as you can see, a little bit of seaweed is sometimes what we call it. They tend to call it sea vegetables in the industry, although this one says wild Atlantic seaweed on it. And dulce adds a nice ocean flavor. So a little bit reminiscent of tuna fish. And those flakes are a little bit chewy, so they'll add some nice texture to this. And they are a little bit salty, so I'm not going to put any salt in this. There's a little bit of salt already in the mayonnaise I mentioned, and there's enough in the dulce that we don't need any more. All of these salads, just like if you were making it with tuna, they all taste better when they've chilled a little bit and allowed the flavors to blend. So if you have a chance to make these ahead of when you want to actually eat them, it's a good idea to put them in your refrigerator and just let them sit for a while. All right. So I think you can, let's see. You can see there's a variety of colors in there. There's the chickpeas, the celery, the green onion, the dulce. So have a nice looking blend. And it's not all, chopped down to a paste. We have some texture to it as well. So then when we get around to making the sandwich, let's see what we've got here for sandwich fixings. I chose, and of course you could put anything you want in the sandwich. I tried in the 3 sandwiches today to use slightly different options in most of them, just for variety and to give you some ideas. But there's no reason why these have to be the vegetables. You could do tomato, whatever you want. I had some nice purple lettuce, and so I used that, some cucumber. These are some radish sprouts. They're so delicious. I get them from a farm here in that goes to the Saratoga Farmers Market. And the radish sprouts add a nice taste. These are bell peppers. And of course, our pickled onions. So let's make it up into a sandwich and see how that looks. As with the vegetables, I did a variety of breads today, just for kicks. Let's put this better than tuna on some wheat bread. Again, I'll switch it. And one nice thing about eating a whole food plant-based diet is that, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of fiber all the fiber in plants. Beans are especially high in fiber. They're your best source of fiber, really. When you think about eating beans, grains, vegetables, and fruits, beans really are a powerhouse of fiber. So let's see what else goes on this. I'm going to add a little bit more of that mustard, or mayo actually, just to this bread here. Not critical. You can also just add a little bit more filling. So what I was going to say about the fiber is that the fiber helps fill you up. And it's all good, nutritious food. So usually when you're on a whole food plant-based diet, you don't have to worry about portion size or calories. You just get full naturally from the fiber and you stop eating. So people often find when they switch over to a plant-based diet, how wonderful it is to just eat. They don't have to measure things. They don't have to count calories. They don't have to track anything or write it in a journal. Just enjoy your food. So we've got some pickled onions. Put those in. And some lettuce. Put that up here. Of course, I know you all know how to make a sandwich. So that's not the reason I'm putting this together. But I want you to see how when you use all these beautiful colors, how appealing your sandwich is when you cut into it. So that's why I'm going to do this. Let's put a few more onions on here. All right. Okay. Let's see how I layered it. Well, you can see almost all the colors there. But I think, we all eat with our eyes before we actually taste the food. We look at it. And when you see all the colors in here and you think about all the good nutrition and good health that it can bring your body, I find that an enjoyable way to start a meal. So there is the Better Than Tuna sandwich. Chris, are there any questions we should address on this yet?
No questions in chat. If you have any questions, put them in and I'll ask them for Deb. Okay,
great. Then we'll move on. Now you could also, let's say you didn't have chickpeas, you could use a white bean for this probably. It wouldn't have exactly the same flavor, but I'm sure it would still be very enjoyable, like a cannellini bean or navy beans if you had those on hand. Be flexible, use what you have. I really am a firm believer in not looking at a recipe and saying, oh, I don't have that one ingredient and therefore I can't make it. Usually you can find a substitution unless it's, the main ingredient. But even for beans, chickpeas, you can find a substitution. All right, so let me clear the decks here. My husband doesn't know it, but we are going to be eating sandwiches for days when I'm done with this class. All right. So the next sandwich I'm going to make is the tempeh, curried tempeh. And tempeh, I put some information in the packet for you that talks about what tempeh is, how it's made. And I wanted to leave this tempeh somewhat in its packaging so that if you're not familiar with it, you can see how it looks when you get into the store. It's sold in this sort of a rectangular plastic package. It's usually sold where the tofu is in the grocery store, in the chilled section of, often in produce area. I can't say that's where it is in every store, but that's where I find it usually around here. And this is made of soybeans. Some tempeh also has grains in it. And there is a company, Light Life is a very popular brand. Another brand that some stores have locally is Soy Boy, which is made in Rochester. And the information that I put at the base of the recipe page is taken from the Soy Boy website. And you can poke around. I gave you a couple links to look at if you're curious about how tempeh is made and what you should know about it. One thing I will tell you about it, and it's highlighted in some of that information, is that it's made with a mold. It's a fermented food, right? They take the soybeans and they introduce deliberately a mold to it. And that's what helps to sort of hold all these soybeans together. I don't know if you can really see the actual growth that's holding those beans, but you can see the soybeans, I know. And in between it, this glue is what is generated from the mold that they introduce. This is a food that came from Indonesia, still very popular there. And you'll find it increasingly on restaurant menus and opportunities to eat it around here. If you ever go to Four Seasons Market down on Henry Street in Saratoga, they have a wonderful sandwich that they make with tempeh, very similar to a Reuben. And they use the tempeh, they brine it, and then they put it with sauerkraut and some vegan cheese, or I think they also make it with regular cheese for people that are not vegans. And it like tofu, it can take on a lot of flavors. It has a little bit more of an assertive flavor than tofu, so it works best with robust sauces that have a lot of flavor as well. But plain tofu with no sauce tastes a little bit nutty, I guess. It's got a very dense texture, which some people don't like as much. I really like tempeh though, so I like to use it. And it holds up really well in this recipe for a curry salad. So I told you in the recipe to cut it and steam it, which I already did, but I wanted to put it back in its packaging just so you could see what it looks like. Let me get this out of the way. And here's my recipe. Got a lot of pages on the counter here. So let's make this tempeh. And what we're going to do is cut the tempeh up. I'm going to dice it somewhat into very small chunks, very small pieces. So I already did the steaming, like I said. The steaming helps to take away, sometimes it's described as bitterness. I don't really find tempeh to be bitter, but there is sort of an assertive quality about it that the steaming helps to reduce. So I'm going to just chop this into smaller chunks. It does not really mash like tofu does. So I just like to chop it a little bit finely. Otherwise, it's hard to make it into a sandwich if the chunks are too big. Tempeh is wonderfully high in protein, really good protein source. And it holds up nicely. If you put it in stews, you can also crumble it and make it into like a taco meat substitute. All right, I think this is fine enough here. I'm curious if any of you have cooked with tempeh before and what you've made with it. Maybe if you have experience, you could drop a little comment in the chat if Chris can share. I know it may not be a familiar food to you, so if there's no one who's cooked with it before, that's fine too. All right, so we're going to once again use the mayonnaise. And I'm going to use the cashew mayonnaise. Here it is. All right. I have enough on my counter that I'm losing things. Here we go. So this is the cashew mayonnaise that I made using the recipe that I provided you. And I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit, I'm sure you can't see this on the camera. It's lighter in color. It's a more white color than the tofu mayonnaise that I made. Primarily because there were a few things in the tofu mayonnaise that made it a little bit more yellow. But this cashew mayonnaise, be careful. It's tasty. You could eat it with a spoon, but don't. It's really wonderful. So I'm going to put in, let's start with a 1/4 cup, but I may well add more because I think that the tempeh may need a little bit more moisture than just a 1/4 cup. And so we'll start with that and see how we go. I'm going to add in a 1/4 cup of celery. And when I make things with curry, whether it's a vegetable curry, I like some sweetness in there. I really enjoy that. So I'm going to put some raisins in here. These are dark raisins, but you could certainly use yellow, or you could use currants if you had some of those. And I'm also going to add some sunflower seeds just for a little crunch and a little boost of nutrition. It's going to be a really high protein salad with both the tempeh and the seeds in there. And I'm going to add some curry powder. I suggest you start with just 2 teaspoons of curry powder and then see if you want more. Some curry powders are much hotter than others. You don't want to ruin your salad right off the bat. That spoonful is a little shy, so I'm going to add a little bit more here. Try, if you can, to find a curry powder that doesn't have salt in it. I like the spices very much from this company called Penzeys Spices out of the Midwest. They're also located, they have a store in the Albany area. I think it's still in Stuyvesant Plaza. But you can order from them online. And one of the things I like about them is they are very good in putting together some salt-free blends. And in fact, yeah, this is one of them. This doesn't have any salt in it. I picked up some additional curry powder the other day that I wanted to have on hand because I was running low, and I noticed it does have salt in it. So it just pays to know what you have. And if you can find it without salt, you probably have more flavor because salt's a cheap ingredient. If they don't put salt in, they probably put in something else that's more tasty. So I'm going to mix this up, and then I'm going to taste it and see what I think. This has, I think, the need for a little bit more mayonnaise.
Deb, I have a question whether you have an alternative for curry powder in the salad.
Well, we could make a totally different salad instead of the curried salad. Is that what the question is? So no curry? You know, I've made, you could make a barbecue tempeh sandwich. I've done that before. It's easier than this. Slice up your tempeh, maybe a little, a nice thin slice, but one that will still hold together. It's not going to fall apart. Put it in a small nonstick frying pan if you have it, or just a frying pan. But and then put a small amount of barbecue sauce, whatever you think is reasonable. If I'm assuming you might have some in your refrigerator, and just heat it up, and that's really tasty. It'd be good with the onions, and then of course you can pile in some extra vegetables to add to the nutrition. So I actually do that with tempeh pretty regularly. I also sometimes just sneak it into pasta sauce. Just because I like it. So I'll just add some to whatever, maybe a tomato-based sauce. Again, it does well with more robust flavors. I don't think I'd try it in, say, some kind of a creamy light sauce, but something with tomatoes or barbecue sauce, these assertive flavors, curry, they do a good job. Hopefully that helps out. Sure.
Yeah, Stephanie said she has someone in her family that doesn't like curry.
Yeah, well, you know, curry is an interesting thing because I think here, many of us, as I do often, I'll say I'm making curry for dinner, and everybody has an idea about what that is. But curry really just is a blend of spices, and so there are many options. And if you could identify what the flavor is that they don't like, that might allow you to still enjoy something that has a curry or a well-seasoned flavor, but while avoiding what it is they don't like. Sometimes curry powder has saffron in it, and that's a pretty distinctive flavor. Some people don't care for it. Penzeys, the spice company I was speaking of earlier, does some other Indian spices. spice blends as well. In fact, I have an assortment of 4. I think they even have more than that. And they're all just delicious. So you could experiment with that. All right.
Stephanie said good ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm going to taste this and see how it tastes and see what I might need to adjust. I think that's it right there. It doesn't need more curry powder. But again, that's a matter of personal preference and also what is in your curry powder. So definitely taste it yourself. I mentioned I like sweet things with my curry, and I forgot to put it on the recipe. But if I have a jar of mango chutney in my pantry, I will definitely put this in the sandwich or on curry when I eat curry. It's just really good. This happens to be from Trader Joe's, so it's their house brand, but you can also find it in the grocery store. I think, again, in the international aisle, probably near the Indian section. Major Gray's is a common brand of mango chutney. It's got kind of a tangy, it's a little bit sweet, but also a little bit tangy. It's a very nice complement. So now we've got that tempeh salad together. Let's see what we can do with that. Let's see what we're going to do. This one. Now I'm going to make this directly on the board. I should have mentioned earlier about bread. I try to buy whole grain bread. The last sandwich, I will admit, is not a whole grain bread because I wanted a big roll, and the one that I could find in the store was made with white flour. But that first sandwich I made with a whole grain bread, had a variety of whole grains and also nuts and seeds in it. And this is a lavash, so it's a flatbread, and it will work out very nicely for this. So I think I'm actually going to put a little bit of that chutney down as a base. You can see the chutney itself has some golden raisins and some red peppers, obviously some mango in it. And I'm actually going to put on top of that some spinach. Again, I just chose different greens and different colors. I did some peeled carrot, just took my vegetable peeler and made some what I called carrot ribbons. It's hard to eat a thick slice of carrot, but it's not hard to bite through these thin ribbons. And I think I'm going to put the curry blend down now. And of course, you don't have to eat this in a sandwich. You could eat it with some cooked grains like rice or quinoa or bulgur, all sorts of cooked grains. You could have a scoop of it on a green salad. Just add it in or add it on the side. Enjoy it that way. And I also thought about how you could enjoy it as a healthy snack. Let me sneak this in before I forget it, right? You could put together a platter and just use something like, this is endive, or these little tiny red bell peppers that you can buy at the supermarket. And you could stuff the salads into that. Here I've used the chickpea salad and also an egg salad, or an egg-like salad, I should say, that I made with the tofu. So you could snack on this and it would be a great meal. You'd have a couple different vegetables here, as well as 2 different kinds of protein-based and fiber-rich salads. So feel free to serve it up like that. If you avoid bread or you have a gluten issue, that's totally fine. All right, so let's put down some cilantro because I like it. Now, not everybody likes cilantro. I don't know if we have any people that do not care for it, but for some people, they're not being fussy. It actually tastes like soap to them. So whenever I use cilantro and I have guests, I always ask before I put it in, or I use it on the side and let people add to it. And I'm going to just put some onions right on top of that. This is a smaller lavash. Sometimes they make them in big squares. Let's even see if I left any room to close it up here. Yeah, I did. Okay. And if I cut this in half, again, you'll be able to see all these nice colors in this food, right? So you can see the pickled onions there at the bottom and a nice layer of the curry and then the carrots and the spinach at the top. So that is going to make a really delicious snack or lunch. Okay. Now on to the sandwich with the olive spread, which is also one of those foods that I could just eat right from the jar. The olive spread would be great as an hors d'oeuvre. You know, you could put it on crackers. Also good if you would like something different in your pasta sauce. Maybe you have a tomato sauce, but you think, oh, I'd like a little something to, you know, make it a little fancier. Scoop of olive spread into the tomato sauce, shares all of that great, robust flavor. Really delicious. So let me just clean up a little bit here. Be right back. So this last sandwich, there's not much to make once you make the olive spread. So I'm going to go right into the assembly of the sandwich. And as I mentioned, I don't usually eat white bread just because I find whole grain to be more nutritious, more fiber, more protein, you know, more vitamins. But I wanted a big sort of a, what you'd call maybe a sub roll. I was actually looking for a ciabatta or something with a real hard crust, but I didn't, you know, sometimes you don't find what you want at the grocery store. So I got this sort of sub-like roll and I split it. This would be quite a bit of bread to eat, and I have no problems eating bread, but in order to make room for all these nice vegetables, I'm going to pull some of it out of the middle. And that's going to give us a nice cavity in which to put some of these ingredients. And I'll save this for later. It can go into thickening up a soup, or you can make breadcrumbs out of it. So I'm just going to pull a little bit of the middle out. And if this were a crusty loaf or roll, then you also are giving the vegetables some access to the outsides of the roll. And as they sit in this cavity, they'll help soften up the bread. So it's not quite as hard to bite into. But now we've got that done. So let me show you the olive spread. I showed you the olives early. Remember, this is a blend of like the large green pitted olives and the Kalamata olives. And let me see if you can get you a, I don't know if you can, you know, it's kind of like a pickle relish, but just made with olives, right? It's all chopped up. And with the capers and the lemon juice and some hot red peppers, hot red pepper flakes. Sometimes recipes like this will have you put some olive oil in. I don't find I need it. Let me tell you also, if you're looking for an easier way to get to that flavor without making the spread, again, Trader Joe's has this product called olive tapenade, which is, you'll find recipes for tapenade online as well. This has some added oil in it, which I try to avoid just because, as I said earlier, oil is a processed food. It just adds fat. We don't really need it. If you're going to eat it, maybe save it for those places where it really adds flavor. But if you look at the nutrition information on this, it's not too bad in terms of fat, and I don't think they use too much oil. So that's available to you at Trader Joe's, and I think you can find similar products in the supermarket. They also have this red pepper spread, which is made with red peppers and eggplants. So that's another thing you could add to a sandwich like this to give it some flavor. This is delicious. I've had it before. And you know, you don't have to use mayonnaise, and you can take a break from using mustard. It's nice to find these things that offer us some variety of flavor. So I noted that we could use the vegan mayonnaise or hummus and the olive spread. So actually I'm going to use hummus I have just enough hummus in my refrigerator to use on this. This happens to be a jalapeno hummus, so it'll give us a little extra kick in the sandwich. I'm going to put that down here, a little bit on the edges of this bread. Of course, hummus is a perfect thing to make a plant-based sandwich with, but I think everyone knows hummus really well, maybe a little too well sometimes. So, you know, to me, having been vegan for 10 years almost, I've eaten a lot of hummus. So I always like to find things other than hummus. But it is useful, and it's a great substitute for mayonnaise because of its nutritional benefits, right? It has nice protein and fiber and other nutrients from chickpeas. Then we're going to use some of this olive spread. A little bit of this goes a long way. Taste your olive spread, again, when you're making it, and also once it's been refrigerated for a while. We're not making an olive spread sandwich. We're putting olive spread on the sandwich. I guess that's the way I would say. I mean, you can eat as much of it as you like, but a little bit goes a long way in terms of its flavor. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of that. And then we have a variety of vegetables. Let me see if I can get them all to share the camera here. So this is a great sandwich to go through your fridge and use up what leftovers. Maybe you made a big green salad last night and you put some in the refrigerator because you didn't finish it. Well, that's a great thing to add to this sandwich. Maybe you have some steamed asparagus. Again, maybe a leftover from a few nights ago. You have 2 stalks. What are you going to do with it? Put it in the sandwich. So I happen to have some roasted mushrooms here. These I roasted actually in a stainless steel pan over the stove. No, didn't need any oil. Just get your pan really hot. Stainless steel pan, not a nonstick pan. You definitely don't want to do this with a nonstick. But you can just put the mushrooms in, and there's enough moisture in them that they will just sort of roast up on their own. So I'm going to put some mushrooms in. I love mushrooms. And they're doing a lot of things with mushrooms and fungi in the plant-based nutrition world. You know, they're starting to develop a lot of new products, some sort of meat-like products. There's a local company that now has a product, I think, at Honest Sweet Food Co-op in Albany. It's a bacon imitation made out of mushrooms. I have not had it yet. So. Okay, I'm going to put in some arugula. Nice spicy green, right? And this has some radicchio in it, which is like a cabbage, just a little bit. I love arugula. And then, so those are not particularly moist things I've put on here. So let's add some things that will add a little bit of liquid. So we're going to add some sliced tomato and some cucumber. And this is some summer squash that I steamed. You could, you know, frequently when we make grilled vegetables on our outdoor grill, I have leftovers of those, and those would be delicious in here. But I didn't want to go out in the grill today in the rain. But these are just pieces of summer squash that I steamed. And then I put on some pepper, and I put on some vinegar that I happen to have in my pantry. The vinegar I used, and you could use any vinegar that you enjoy, including balsamic vinegar, which many people have. But this happens to be a lemongrass mint vinegar from Saratoga olive oil. And it's a little bit sweet, which I think is going to play very nicely with the salty, spicier flavors of the olives. So that is what I'm putting on the sandwich. And let's see if I can actually close it and cut it without just making a colossal mess. There is a traditional sandwich, I want to say it's from New Orleans, called muffaletta, that has a lot of different kinds of meat in it. This is kind of the the vegan version of that. Ah, yeah, now you really get, see all those beautiful colors we got? Oops, other way. Everything in my camera is backwards from my perspective, so that's why I keep moving it off camera. So we've got the arugula, the summer squash, cucumber, tomato, mushrooms, and then the olive spread. And this is the kind of sandwich that I think would pack well. If you were going hiking, especially if you had a really crusty roll, wrap it up tightly and then just let it soften up in your pack as you head up the mountain. So that would be a delicious meal. I should have mentioned, if you were going to go on a hike and you want, say, a tomato slice in your sandwich, one helpful trick is to put your tomato slice while you're making your sandwiches on the paper towel. And you could actually do this with the summer squash too, because it's kind of wet. And just give it a little pat and take some of that water out of it. And that'll help make sure that your tomato doesn't just completely soak through your bread. I'm not so worried with this roll, but on a regular slice of sandwich bread, it might be a little bit wet. So just blot them a little bit before you use them, and then they don't contribute so much water. Okay. Yeah, we are almost at 1 o'clock. So if there are any questions, please go ahead and share them in the chat. Chris, do we have anything there that we should discuss?
At this point, I'm going to say thank you very much for the program, and we'll finish for the day, except I'm going to stop the recording at that point and let people unmute themselves and turn on the videos and ask questions. So thank you very much, Deb, and it's been an excellent program. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.